RP means received pronunciation. The term was first used in the early 19th century. In the early 20th century, Daniel Jones picked it up and used it in his preface to the second edition of the Pronouncing Dictionary. This edition was published in 1926. Daniel Jones used the term received pronunciation in the second edition of the Pronouncing Dictionary to replace the term he had used in the first edition of the Pronouncing Dictionary published in 1917. And that is the term public school pronunciation. In the second edition, Daniel Jones refused to use the term public school pronunciation, and he instead used the term received pronunciation. In this context, received means accepted. Received means accepted as right. Received means having wide acceptability as the correct pronunciation. Daniel Jones gave a very concise definition of RP. Daniel Jones defined RP as the variety of English pronunciation most usually heard in the everyday speech of the families of southern England, whose menfolk have been educated in the great public schools and at Oxford and Cambridge. I repeat, Daniel Jones defined RP as the variety of English pronunciation most usually heard in the everyday speech of the families of southern England, whose menfolk have been educated in the great public schools and at Oxford and Cambridge. Thus, we have three clear-cut components in this definition. The first is a geographical component. The second is a gender component. The third is a class component. RP is the pronunciation of English of a particular geography of southern England, maybe of southern England and eastern England. That is the geographical component. There is a gender component, because Daniel Jones speaks of menfolk. He does not say individuals, he does not say persons, he says menfolk. This is because at that time only boys were admitted into the great public schools like Harrow and Eton. Finally, there is a class component. The public schools of Britain are actually private schools. It is a typically British anomaly. Public schools in Britain are actually private schools, and they levy astronomical fees, and only boys from upper class backgrounds can afford to study in such schools. Public schools should not be confused with state-run schools, state schools, which are funded by the public. Thus, RP has a geographical component, a gender component, and a class component. It is a fact that about 2%, maybe between 2% and 3% of the population of the United Kingdom speaks RP. Today, RP has lost much of its prestige, and it is met with open hostility in working class areas and certain regions of the UK like Northern England, Scotland and Wales. But the fact remains that RP is capable of masking regional peculiarities. If you speak RP, nobody can say from which part of the UK you have come. But if you speak RP, they can say that you come from an upper class background, from some part of the UK, or in today's context, more probably some former colony of the British. The members of the royal family, including the Queen, speak RP. There is no doubt that even today, RP is looked upon as the poshest pronunciation of English. However, I have to warn you that RP is not a homogeneous pronunciation. There are several varieties of RP, including conservative RP, mainstream RP, and contemporary RP. Thank you.